Hello, everyone. Welcome to How to Read Chinese Poetry podcast. I'm Zong-qi, the program host. In this podcast program, my colleagues and I aim to introduce cutting-edge scholarship on Chinese poetry to a broad general audience. We will present 52 episodes covering the major poetic genres developed over China's long history. Each episode features close reading of one or more of the best-known Chinese poems, with an aim to illuminate their literary greatness and cultural significance. For all the discussed poems, Chinese text, English translation, romanization, and brief notes are provided at our website, howtoreadchinesepoetry.com. By following the 52 episodes, listener will gain a bird's-eye view of the thematic, formal, and generic evolution of Chinese poetry from antiquity to the modern era. Instruct and delight is what we wish to accomplish in each talk. Without further ado, let's begin. Today, our guest host, Professor Egan, will present his fourth and last episode entitled Walking from a Yangzhou Dream, heptosyllabic quatrains in the Middle and Late Tang. Let us welcome Professor Egan.
Hello, everyone. This is the fourth and last of our episodes on Qijue, Quatrains in the Tang Dynasty. The first two highlighted origins and masterworks of pentasyllabic quatrains, wujue, which includes some of the most celebrated poems in the dynasty. Last time we moved on to heptasyllabic quatrains, Qijue, in the first half of the 8th century. At that time, Qijue was a popular song form, and the range of themes was relatively narrow, limited to old yuefu, music bureau, themes of the boudoir and the frontier, as well as parting poems. Beginning in the latter half of the 8th century, the uses of Qijue greatly expanded, and poets adopted it to express personal feelings and experiences, to meditate on history and legend, and to comment on politics and society. A style developed that was distinct both from wujue and earlier Qijue. A major influence, in my estimation, came from the regulated verse of Du Fu's late period, particularly his Qilü, heptasyllabic regulated verse. To express the complexities of a lifetime of hard experience, Du Fu abandoned the unity of scene that characterizes most High Tang poetry, and, through the use of dense symbolism and rich cultural allusions, created sudden shifts of point of view that obliterate barriers of time and space, and distinctions between self and world. We might describe this as a stream of consciousness. The poet's experience puts in motion a series of sudden mental connections. Late Tang Qijue often present a shortened version of Du Fu's shifting style. The first couplet describes an experience in the present that serves as a catalyst for mental projection in the second couplet. Thus, later Qijue poets often juxtaposed different realms of existence, past glory with present ruin, consciousness of age with memory of youth, mundane reality with supramundane legend or imagination. A fine example is Red Cliff by Du Mu, 803 to 852. Du Mu had a moderately successful bureaucratic career in the polarized political climate of the period, but the image presented in his Qijue and affirmed in popular anecdotes about him is that of a playboy. Even a weighty historical subject like that of Red Cliff becomes, in Du Mu's hands, a romantic daydream. Buried in sand, a broken spear, its iron not yet gone, I take up and burnish it and recall an ancient age. If east wind had not aided young Master Zhou, still spring would bind the Chow girls deep in Bronze Bird Tower. Chibi, 折戟沉沙铁未销，自将磨洗任前朝。东风不与周郎便，统却春山锁二乔。The final years of the Han Dynasty coincided with a great power struggle for dominance, the Three Kingdoms period. Eventually, only three great warlords were left: Cao Cao, 155 to 220 of Wei to the north, Sun Quan of Wu to the south, and Liu Bei of Shuhan to the southwest. When Cao Cao invaded the south, Wu and Shuhan allied to fight him. The site of the climactic battle in 208 between the two forces was at Red Cliff on the Yangzhou River in modern Puqi, Hubei province. Confident of victory, Cao Cao had chained his troop ships together, bow to stern, and sailed east downriver to meet his foes. Making use of a fortunate change in the direction of the wind, the general of the allied forces, Zhou Yu, dispatched a wave of fire ships and succeeded in annihilating the enemy fleet. Thus, the fate of the empire depended on a turn of the wind. Dumu's focus is, however, not the battle, but the two daughters of the Han official Qiao Xuan, who were acknowledged as great beauties of the empire. The elder had been the wife of Sun Ce, Sun Quan's deceased older brother, and the younger was the wife of Zhou Yu. One of the goals of Cao Cao's invasion was, reputedly, to claim the Qiao sisters for himself. He planned to remove them to Bronze-Bird Tower, Tongquetai, his pleasure palace at a site in modern Linzhang, Hebei province. Cao Cao had also ordered that, after his death, all his palace ladies and dancing girls were to reside there and maintain sacrifices to his memory. What a pity, Dumu suggests, if Cao Cao had succeeded and the Qiao girls had been taken from the world. In dispelling sorrow, an older and wiser Dumu looks back on his life of pleasure and does not like what he sees. Dispelling sorrow. I sunk my soul in the riverlands, wandered with wine, broke the hearts of true girls dancing lightly in my hands. 10 years on, I wake from a Yangzhou dream. All I've won, a callous name in the green mansions. 千怀落魄江南栽酒行，楚腰唱断掌中轻。10年一觉扬州梦，赢得青楼薄幸名。Dancing lightly in my hands, Zhang Zhongqing, is a glancing allusion to the great Han beauty Zhao Feiyan, who, it was said, was so light that she could dance on the emperor's palm. Green mansions is a euphemism for the dwellings of the courtesans. Dumu's older contemporary, Liu Yuxi, 772 to 842, was closely engaged in the political factionalism of the times and suffered for it. Yet he remained an independent and insouciant voice. He was banished in 805 to a minor post in Yangzhou, in present Hunan province. Allowed to return to the capital of Chang'an 10 years later, he wrote the following brash poem. In the 10th year of Yuanhe, I was recalled from Yangzhou to the capital, and in jest sent this poem to all of the flower-viewing gentlemen. On purple streets where red dust brushes my face, everyone says they've returned from viewing the flowers. 1,000 peach trees in Xuandu Temple were all planted after young Liu had gone. 紫陌红尘拂面来，无人不到看花回。玄都观里讨千树，尽是刘郎去后才。The brashness is in the interpretation. Liu observes the crowds of capital residents in springtime who have gone flower viewing at the Xuandu temple, and wryly reflects that the peach trees were all planted after he was banished. Although factual, his political opponents recognized the intentionally sarcastic tone and understood that they were the flower enthusiasts who caused the dust that hit up in Liu's face. Liu was again banished, this time further south to Guangdong because of this poem. Unbowed, 12 years later, he was allowed to return to the capital, and once more he wrote a poem about the Xuandu temple. He finds the temple is mossy and overgrown, and all the peach trees are gone. His poem concludes, "Where have all the peach-growing Taoists gone? Master Liu has once again arrived." Seen by his enemies as another sarcastic attack, Liu Yuxi was banished once more. Li Shangyin deserves his reputation as one of China's most obscure poets. Some critics have explained certain poems as autobiographical works about clandestine love affairs with palace ladies and Taoist priestesses, while others see the same poems as simple expressions of personal sadness, or even as satirical political allegories. Here is a fine example. Chang'e. Behind the mica screen, candles cast deep shadows. The great river slowly sinks, and dawn stars are drowned. Chang'e must regret stealing the elixir over blue sea in dark sky, thinking night after night. Yunwu pingfeng, zhu yingshan, Chang'e jianluo xiao xingchen, Chang'e yinghui tou ling yao, Bihai qingtian ye ye xin. Chang'e, the goddess of the moon, had been the wife of the legendary archer Yi. After he saved humankind by successfully shooting down 9 of the 10 suns that were burning up the earth, the Queen Mother of the West rewarded him with the elixir of immortality. Chang'e stole and consumed the elixir and became immortal. However, in doing so, she lost her corporeality and, to her surprise and horror, floated up to the moon, where she remains. Li Shangyin integrates the Chang'e legend into his own melancholy reflections. After sitting up through the night by candlelight, he watches the great river, the Milky Way, fade in the dawn light. His thoughts turn to Chang'e up in the moon. Yet who or what is she to him? A former lover who is now unattainable? An unattainable ideal? Or does he see himself in Chang'e, a loner, emotionally or spiritually cut off from others by circumstances? The first couplet may provide a hint. The candles reflected in the mica screen glitter like 1,000 stars in his room, just as Chang'e is surrounded by stars in the sky. Through poetical equivalence, he becomes the one who was cut off from others. And what elixir has he stolen that has caused his loneliness? Perhaps his decision to devote his life to art? I'd like to speak now about the form of the Qijue quatrains, the 2 forms, the heptasyllabic and pentasyllabic, and essentially get a little bit into the technicalities of how they work. Closure is considered by many what Qijue do best. Various epithets used to describe Qijue: 1 note, 3 echoes, 一唱三叹, meaning beyond the words, 言外之意, flavor beyond flavor, 味外之味, and lines that end but meaning that does not end, 拒绝意不绝, all clearly refer to strong closure. The closure functions akin to the way musical phrasing can create an emotional response, the oomph one feels when a piece of music hits its climax. Both form and content can lead to closure. Let us first consider how semantic rhythm contributes to closure. While there are no strict rules for this aspect, frequently Qijue poets present patterns of the final trisyllables in the 4 lines, which aid closure. That is, the final trisyllable can either be a 2+1 combination or a 1+2. That is, a dissyllable and a monosyllable, one way or the other. Red Cliff, which we just read, is a good example of how a pattern is used to create a certain sense of closure this way. In the first couplet, both of the lines end in a 1+2 pattern. Line 3 changes to a 2+1, which breaks it, but then line 4 returns to a 1+2 and the familiar pattern. Familiar patterning creates a certain emotion of completion, of pleasure. So you can say that even though this is all just through the meter, essentially, there is a certain inbuilt structure in those lines, which helps you feel you've reached a certain point of completion. Jueju rhyming schemes, whether they're XA, which is typical for wujue, the pentasyllabic quatrains, or AAXA, which is more typical for Qijue, also help to create closure. In the former, rhyming characters are present at the end of each couplet, but the reader or listener experiences the rhyme only once, at the very end. The repetition of couplet structure and the rhyme integrate the two halves and complete a stable pattern, engendering a gratifying sense of closure. AAXA also leads to closure, but in a different way. The ringing of the rhyme in line 2 marks the first couplet as a seemingly finished unit. The poem, in a sense, starts again in line 3, and the reader or listener has a certain expectation that the second half will follow the pattern of the first. The omission of the rhyme in line 3 then presents a disquieting break in the sequence. However, the return to the familiar rhyme in line 4 confirms the original pattern and unites the two couplets. Most Tang poems, including Jueju, adhere to set patterns of the Chinese tones. The details are too technical to go into here, but a few remarks may be useful. Since the patterning is determined by the opposition of tones 2 syllables at a time, and because the lines have an odd number of characters, maximum contrast within the single line will always be imperfect. Only when 2 lines with exactly opposite tonal patterns are combined does the prosody balance perfectly. The reader or listener perceives the completion of the couplet structure, confirming expectations created by the ongoing sequence. The tonal alternation of 2 couplets again emphasizes closure. There are only 2 standard couplet patterns. Each follows the principle of maximum contrast, but in slightly different ways. So when the first couplet uses one pattern, the second will use the other. The 2 couplets affirm an identical structural principle, but do so in different ways. The revelation of this dual quality of sameness within difference and difference within sameness creates closure. Put another way, it is because the pattern of the second couplet differs and yet follows the same principle that closure is ensured. If both couplets used the same pattern, the prosody would be merely repetitive and no ending point would be implied. Apart from prosody, the organization of contents is invariably designed to lead to a sense of closure as well. The first couplet tends to be a setup for conclusion in the second couplet, and it is at first glance not necessarily memorable. Unlike in the 8-line regulated verse, 律诗, in Jueju, parallelism is not required, although it is an option. When found, it is more frequent in first couplets, where it efficiently presents multiple scene-setting images in a few words. However, parallelism is generally avoided in second couplets because its static quality makes conclusions difficult. The second couplet is the focus of the poem. It is successful when it completely integrates all 4 lines. Closure of a theme in Jueju does not imply predictability. The first couplet sets up a theme or topic, perhaps by suggesting a question, a dramatic situation, or an archetypal character. The reader has an expectation of where the poem is going, but the successful Jueju will turn, or zhuan, the pattern in the second couplet and bring about a gratifying closure in a way that is surprising, transformative, yet still a natural outgrowth of what has been said before. Finally, a word about the differences between the 2 forms. Frequently, critics have assumed that Qijue is merely a longer version of the wujue. However, there are significant structural differences between the 2 that led to clear divergences in their aesthetic potentials and the styles that poets developed. The pentasyllabic line invariably follows a 2+3 meter, which is most often used to present a single subject plus predicate or topic plus comment structure. The 2 parts of the line are read together as related units. Alternatively, Both lines in a couplet may constitute one continuous proposition. It is possible, but very uncommon, for one pentasyllabic line to present two separate topic comment structures. This is because the two-character part of the line is too short to say very much. Although technically you could do that, do a topic comment with two characters. For example, something like Shangao, the mountain is high. That's a topic comment, but doesn't get you very far. The three-character part, however, shows considerably more potential to complete a topic and comment with its 1+2 or 2+1 pattern variability. When we consider the pentasyllabic quatrain, generally we see a maximum of 4 topic comment structures, but more usually 3, as second couplets tend to be continuous propositions to create closure, or even just 2. The heptasyllabic line, with its 4+3 meter, can and frequently does present 2 distinct topic comment structures. A heptasyllabic quatrain could thus theoretically comprise as many as 8 topic comment structures, although a number between 4 and 6 is the norm, as poets tended to employ a balance of imagistic language and continuous propositions. Although the Qijue form is only 8 characters longer than the wujue, it contains far more space for development. Moreover, since the overtones in a poem are often suggested through implicit comparisons between the parts, the more parts there are, the more potential there is for complexity. The rhythm of the heptasyllabic line also differs from that of the pentasyllabic line, which has implications for how poets approached it. When pentasyllabic poetry is chanted, it rather naturally falls into 8 beats per line. Tum, 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 rest, rest, rest. Tum, 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 rest, rest, rest. The length of the silent rests gives the overall rhythm a slow and stately quality, which implicitly suggests that the content is weighty and important. When heptasyllabic poetry is chanted, it also naturally falls into 8 beats per line. Tum, 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 rest. Tum, 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 rest. The 4-beat unit at the beginning of the line creates more momentum than does the 2-beat unit at the beginning of the pentasyllabic line. Moreover, the single beat of rest at the end of heptasyllable gives the impression that each line rushes into the next. Thus, heptasyllabic poetry has a distinctive flow, continuity, and lightness. The best poets of Qijue carefully crafted the sound quality of the syllable combinations, employing alliterations, internal rhymes, and reduplication more frequently than in the pentasyllabic line. The Ming critic Hu Yinglin observed, pentasyllabic jueju emphasize the real and tangible. Usually the substance exceeds literariness. Heptasyllabic jueju emphasize the lofty and beautiful. Usually literariness exceeds substance. The differences between wujue and qijue had a clear impact on poetic practice. After the Tang, wujue became increasingly rare. We can conclude that poets no longer saw creative potential in the form. The great Tang writers had exhausted it. Qijue, on the contrary, remained one of the most popular and expressive poetic forms throughout the classical period. Thank you very much for listening.
Let's thank Professor Egan for such a stimulating talk. This talk concludes his topic on quatrains. To learn more about this topic from Professor Egan, you may read his chapter on quatrain in How to Read Chinese Poetry, a Guided Anthology. Next week, we will get started on the topic Women and Poetry in the Tang Dynasty. Dr. Maya Sameh will be our guest host. I hope you enjoyed today's talk. Let's relax and listen to a recording of the poems in English by Dr. Andrew Merritt and in Mandarin by Zhao Wenxuan.
In the 10th year of Yuan He, I was recalled from Yangzhou to the capital, and in jest sent this poem to all of the flower-viewing gentlemen. On purple streets, where red dust brushes my face, everyone says they've returned from viewing the flowers. 1,000 peach trees in Xuandu Temple were all planted after young Lu had gone. Dispelling sorrow. I sunk my soul in the riverlands, wandered with wine, broke the hearts of Chu girls dancing lightly in my hands. 10 years on, I wake from a Yangzhou dream. All I've won, a callous name in the green mansions. Red Cliff. Buried in sand, a broken spear, its iron not yet gone. I take it up and burnish it, and recall an ancient age. If east wind had not aided young Master Zhou, still spring would bind the Chow girls deep in Bronze-Bird Tower. Chang'e. Behind the mica screen, candles cast deep shadows. The great river slowly sinks, and dawn stars are drowned. Chang'e must regret stealing the elixir. Over blue sea, in dark sky, thinking night after night.
元和10年，自朗州召至京师，细赠看花诸君子。刘禹锡。自没红尘，拂面来，无人不道看花回。玄都观里桃千树，尽是刘郎去后栽。遣怀，杜牧。落魄江南再酒行，楚腰长断掌中轻。10年一觉扬州梦，赢得青楼薄幸名。赤壁，杜牧。折戟沉沙铁未销，自将磨洗认前朝。东风不与周郎便，铜雀春深锁二乔。嫦娥，李商隐。云母屏风烛影深，长河渐落晓星沉。嫦娥应悔偷灵药，碧海青天夜夜心。